All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice exam series where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please subscribe for all of our updates. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Danny is refusing to eat his dinner at night. This previously had not been a problem up until 2 weeks ago. Danny's sister notices that Danny will go into the pantry about an hour before dinner time and eat a snack. Danny's sister tells her mom that they should stop Danny from snacking before dinner. What goal of behavior analysis is best described here? So we have a goal of behavior analysis questions. And our three goals are description, prediction, and control. And these three goals basically give you a blueprint for how we tackle behavior. We start with description, right? And the description is just telling you or saying what happened. Our description is Danny is refusing to eat his dinner at night. It's simply that. We're not making any sort of correlation. We're not trying to establish any control. We're just describing what happened. Next, we have prediction, where we're actually trying to predict or hypothesize some sort of correlation. Why is it that Danny might be refusing to eat dinner at night? Well, Danny's sister says Danny eats a snack before dinner, about an hour before. And so she says, let's stop eating Danny from snacking. Let's stop Danny from snacking before dinner. That is the sister's prediction. She believes there's a correlation between Danny snacking and then refusing to eat dinner. Now, what would control be? Control would be if they actually stopped Danny from snacking and they measured it and they took data, and then it revealed that there was a functional relationship between Danny not snacking and Danny eating dinner. Control implies there is some sort of functional relationship that exists. But we're at the point, given the scenario, where only a prediction has been made. No control has been established yet. Lisa, a behavior analyst, and Monica, a behavior technician, are very close friends. Lisa knows that Monica is a great behavior technician and loves to put her on cases. Last week, Lisa was given a very challenging case, but chose to give the case to Rachel instead of Monica because she knows Rachel is better than Monica with these type of clients, even though she dislikes Rachel. What assumption is demonstrated here? All right, so when we're talking about assumptions, right, you want to be very specific because with assumptions, with dimensions, it can be hard sometimes to discriminate between the different types. Well, let's think about what's going on here. We have Lisa, who has this case, and she needs to choose between Rachel and Monica. She knows Rachel is better than Monica with these clients, but she dislikes Rachel. Regardless, what does Lisa do? She still gives Rachel the case. Now, this is why it's a little tricky because what does that demonstrate? What assumption is Lisa following? If she is strictly going on what she believes is going to work and what she believes is going to be best for the client. That is Lisa's whole motive. What assumption is Lisa adhering to? A, selectionism. Selectionism has to do with learning history and genetic history. We're not discussing ontogeny here, right? Or phylogeny or learning history. We're talking about Lisa choosing the best option strictly based on what she thinks is going to work. What about determinism? Well, determinism says the universe is a lawful and orderly place. Things happen for a reason. We're not really concerned with that. We're not trying to figure out why behavior is happening or why it's not happening. It's not a deterministic question. What about parsimony? Parsimony has to do with the simplest explanation. It might not be the simplest explanation for Lisa to give Rachel the client, considering she dislikes Rachel, but it is pragmatic. It is D. And what makes it pragmatic? Because it is simply based on this objective idea that Rachel is going to be better for the client. Nothing more, nothing less. It is very pragmatic by Lisa, regardless of other feelings, other ideas. It is objectively better. She gives the case to Rachel. So the assumption demonstrated here is pragmatism. The client learns to tie her shoes independently using a task analysis and reinforcement. After demonstrating mastery in multiple sessions, Jake transitions to providing reinforcement on a variable schedule and gradually reduces the frequency of direct practice on this skill. Eventually, Jake only occasionally checks to see if the client can tie their shoes. What is Jake checking for? Pretty straightforward question here, right? What is Jake checking for? What do we know about Jake? Well, we know there's a client who learned to tie their shoes independently. They demonstrated mastery. Jake faded reinforcement and then reduced the frequency of practice. So Jake is essentially fading out this intervention because the client learned to tie their shoes, mastered it, and now Jake is fading it out. So Jake is to the point where he's now only occasionally checking to see if the client can tie their shoes. Well, what is Jake checking for? A, generalization. Now be careful, right? Because Jake is really checking for maintenance. Why do we know that? Well, because the whole question is talking about fading out the intervention, fading out the direct practice, and Jake only checking to see, can they still do it? Can they maintain the response and the behavior even after I'm not teaching it anymore? We don't mention anything about new environments or new people. We're not really discussing generalization in the context of this question. It's much more about maintenance than it is for generalization. What about regression? Careful with regression, right? It's not a term. Now, in practice, you'll probably hear, and you may even use the term regression. But for your exam, we're being behavior analytic, and we're using our behavior analytic language, and regression is not part of that language. And then momentum. We're not looking for behavior momentum here, right? Jake is fading everything out. He's stopping teaching, but he still wants to make sure the client can engage in the skill. So what Jake is checking for here is B, maintenance. Rick recently moved to Louisiana and starts to sweat when he walks outside because of the humidity. Yesterday, Rick walked outside, and as he started to sweat, he heard a woodpecker in his backyard. Now, Rick starts to sweat every time he hears a woodpecker. What has occurred? So we're looking at some sort of conditioning question, right? And the fact that we're looking at this sweating tells you it's a reflex, which tells you it's respondent. So you want to be on the lookout for that. When you get these reflexes, like sweating or crying or sneezing, you want to think respondent. And so if you have a situation where Rick starts to sweat because of the humidity, that's going to be unconditioned, right? The humidity is the unconditioned stimulus. The sweat is the unconditioned reflex. Then Rick walks outside, starts to sweat, which is the unconditioned reflex, and it pairs with this neutral stimulus of woodpecker, or the outside pairs with the woodpecker, I should say. And so now, when Rick hears the woodpecker, what has occurred? Well, respondent conditioning. You've got outside, which is the unconditioned stimulus. It pairs with that neutral stimulus of woodpecker to evoke sweating, which was at the time an unconditioned reflex. The woodpecker becomes a conditioned stimulus, which leads to the conditioned reflex of sweating. This is making it respondent conditioning. Operant conditioning is based on consequences. Respondent conditioning is not. That's the key difference, right? Respondent conditioning isn't worried about consequences. Operant conditioning is. And it isn't extinction of any sorts because we're not putting anything on extinction. We're conditioning this reflex of sweating. Woodpecker becomes a conditioned stimulus. Sweating becomes the conditioned reflex from the woodpecker. What has occurred? A respondent conditioning. Luke has the opportunity to either play math games on the computer on break or watch his favorite show. Each break lasts approximately 10 minutes. Although Luke loves to watch his show, he usually picks math games instead because math games are on a thicker reinforcement schedule than his show. What explains Luke's behavior? Well, let's think about Luke's behavior, right? He has two options. He can watch the show or he can play games. Now, since math games are on a thicker schedule, let's say an FR2, and let's say the show is on a VI5, right? He's going to receive more reinforcement by going to the game. And that's exactly what he does. He loves his show, but he still picks math games because of the thicker reinforcement schedule. What principle explains this behavior? A pre-mac principle. Well, the pre-mac principle says we are using the opportunity for someone to engage in a lower or in a preferred response or activity as reinforcement for engaging in a less preferred response. Now, Luke is getting reinforcement, but we're explicitly asking about why he chooses the game over the show, not the pre-match principle part or the intervention part. What is explaining it is going to be B, matching law. Matching law says behavior is going to go where reinforcement is, and behavior is going to take place more if more reinforcement is readily available. So if reinforcement is more readily available for the games, it's much more likely Luke is going to go choose the games because of that reason, because of matching law. Behavior contrast says behavior is going to change in one environment if the schedule changes in another environment. We're not talking about behaviors across different environments here. And then resistance to extinction, since we're not discussing extinction, D obviously is not associated with this situation. What explains Luke's behavior is this idea of matching law. Luke's behavior is going where the reinforcement is, which happens to be the math games. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.